help support your journey into certifications and to hopefully answer any questions you might have about the certification. So let me go ahead and share my screen here.
What do you want from me, Ashley? What do you want me to say? I want to know what you believe, seeing as a new spiritual leader. It's not up to me to decide.
Only. Huh.
All I can do is worry about myself.
Okay. Files.
Are you able to do it on the, do you see the share screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to get to the right. Share screen. Okay. So now let me go ahead and open up my presentation here. Do you see my presentation now, or
No, we
is
just
it?
see you.
Oh, got you. Okay. Let me go back here to share screen. Okay, let me know. Do you see the small business contracting basics?
Still just see you.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe I have to start sharing or something.
Usually you just
Share.
push that. There you
Okay.
go. Now
Okay,
it's starting.
perfect. Okay, sorry, I haven't
Yay.
used Zoom in a while, so I'm
It's
sorry
okay.
about that.
It's okay.
I'm so
You
used to
think after-
Microsoft Teams.
We
Okay.
should be pros after these last
I
couple of years,
know,
but
I
it's
know,
still a learn. Yeah.
seriously.
You know,
At
it's
this point
okay.
in time, that's a little embarrassing, but okay.
It's all good.
Okay, so again, my name's Adignaz, Ari for short. So I'll be talking about small business contracting. So really what I'm focusing on today is I'm focusing on federal contracting, okay? Because there's all different types of contracting at all different levels of government and all different municipalities. So today, the focus is federal contracting, and specifically, what are the certifications that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, what are some of those federal contracting certifications that are administered by our agency to enable you as a small business to get certified and bid on set-aside opportunities that only those other certified small businesses can bid on. So that's really, what I'm sharing with you today. So I'll talk about the HubZone certification, the Women-Owned Small Business certification, the Economically Disadvantaged Women-Owned Small Business certification, 8A certification, as well as the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business certification, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about our Mentor Protege program as well. But let's start first. Let's go over government contracting, the real kind of what I like to sort of contextualize this presentation with. So it's important to know, some of you may know this, some of you may not know this. Those of you who have heard me do this presentation before know this, that the federal government is actually the world's largest buyer. So the federal government as an entity purchases the most in dollars, in dollar value of any other agency or any other organization around the world. So, and that being said, the federal government has a requirement that 23% of all contracting dollars go to small businesses. Okay, so how does the government monitor this? One of the ways they monitor this is by having these different certification programs that small businesses can apply for and obtain in order to capture that 23% federal contracting dollars. So to give it a, kind of more visual, I guess you could say here, the federal government has set aside contracts. So under each of these certifications, there are contract opportunities that are set aside that only those businesses with those certifications can bid on. And of course, you know, one thing to think about during the course of this presentation is our federal certifications that you're even interested in the first place. So hopefully that's something you can kind of glean and get a better understanding of assessing your own business to determine if any of these certifications would be good for your business in the first place. So the government has sub goals. So there's a sub goal that out of that 23%, 5% of all federal contracting dollars go to women-owned and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. 12% here in fiscal 2023 must go through small disadvantaged businesses. That number about a year ago, that number was 5%. But through the Biden-Harris administration, that number was increased to 11% in last fiscal year. And now for this upcoming fiscal year that began on October 1st, the federal fiscal year that began on October 1st, that goal is 12% of all federal contracting dollars must go through small disadvantaged businesses. 3% must go through hub zone businesses. Now, we're not talking about hubs, the North Carolina State Hub certified businesses. We're talking about the hub zone. That's a federal certification. The hub certification is a state certification. We're talking about 3% of federal contracting dollars must go through hub zone businesses, and 3% must go through service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. It is important to note that any contracts that fall with a dollar value between $3,500 and $250,000, those are automatically supposed to be set aside for small businesses. Okay, so let's talk about the hub zone certification. Okay, so hub zone stands for historically underutilized business zone, hub zone. This particular program, this certification, was established back in 1997 with the goal really of fueling economic development in areas that traditionally have not been utilized as business areas. So areas where business has not been, hasn't thrived as much. So under this program, there are federal agencies that can set aside contracts under this program. The idea is that under this program, a small business is investing in a particular hub zone, a historically underutilized business area, but that they're also providing job opportunities to individuals who live in hub zones. So I'm going to cover what that looks like in just a second here. On this slide, actually. So in order, the most kind of basic requirement qualification to qualify as a hub zone is that first, your small business must be small. Your business must be small. According to NAICS code size standards. And to find NAICS codes and the associated size standards, you can go to sba.gov/size standards, and you can find the table of NAICS codes. NAICS stands for North American Industry Classification System codes. So it's all the 6-digit codes that correspond to industries here in the United States and in North America. And each of those industries has a size standard associated with it. And if your company falls above that size standard, then you're large, or you're other than small. If you're below that size standard, then you're small. One thing to note, however, is that 97% of businesses in the United States are considered small. So most likely your business is considered small. The business must be at least 51% owned by US citizens, a tribal government, an Alaska Native corporation, Native Hawaiian organization, or a community development corporation. Most of you all are probably individual small businesses, so you fall under that US citizen piece. So 51% of the business must be owned by US citizens. The principal office must be located in a hub zone. So by principal office, we're talking about the location where the greatest number of your employees report to. So we're not necessarily talking about the area, the office that is like your headquarters office, like your official headquarters office. We're talking about the office where the majority of your employees report to. That is considered your principal office according to HubZone standards. And that office must be located in the hub zone. So it's important to kind of, if you do have multiple offices, to know what is considered, what is a principal office in the context of the hub zone. At least 35% of your employees must be hub zone residents. And that's going back to that piece that I was talking earlier on the previous slide about. One of the goals of this program is to generate economics, is to generate jobs basically in hub zones. So 35% of your employees must also be residing in a hub zone. How do you know whether or not your business is located in a hub zone? You can actually go to this website here at the top of the slide. You really only want to go to the website that's on the SBA, that's on an SBA page. So this website, maps.certify.gov, this is a SBA website. So you don't necessarily want to Google HubZone map and just go to any HubZone map, because the most up-to-date HubZone maps or HubZone map is the one that's being generated by SBA. So you want to go to SBA's website, you want to go to the right page. And what you do is you literally input your address, that principal office location, the address of that principal office location. And once you input that address, it'll spit back to you whether or not that location is in a hub zone. You don't necessarily, I know here on this slide, it says Buncombe County. You don't necessarily want to just base it on the county, because sometimes with counties, like the whole county may not be a hub zone, or sometimes you might look at a map and you're like, oh, there's my principal office, but it's like across the street is a hub zone, but on your side of the street is not a hub zone. So you definitely want to input the full address of your location to determine whether or not it's in a hub zone. The hub zone application process involves going to sba.gov/hub zone. And there's a link to the general login system at that hub zone page, that sba.gov hub zone page /hub zone page. There's a general login system. So you can go and you can apply through that system. You're going to have first been registered in the System for Award Management, though, SAM.gov. SAM.gov is separate from this application process, and SAM.gov is separate from SBA. So you're going to want to go to SAM, System for Award Management, SAM.gov, and register there first. But really, you're going to want to really think about, first really assess, do I really want to sell my goods and services to the federal government through this hub zone certification? So I'll talk a little bit later about some of the things to consider when you're going into federal contracting. And I think Pam will also talk a little bit about the importance of kind of assessing your business as well before you decide to go after some of these certifications. So you apply for the certification, and you will have to provide some documentation. The documentation for all of these certifications is really very similar. So it's kind of like, really for like any of these certifications, even the certifications at the state level, city level, you usually have to provide similar information: business financials, business taxes, personal financials, business certificates, Secretary of State filings, operating agreements, bylaws, depending on your business structure. So you can actually go to that web page, the sba.gov/HubZone page, to get a better understanding of what are some of the documents that would be required for the HubZone program. Women-owned small business program. Let's talk a little bit about that. So let's talk a little bit about the women-owned small business and the economically disadvantaged women-owned small business program. So I'm going to go ahead and call it WOSB, Women-Owned Small Business, or ED-WOSB. So WOSB or ED-WOSB, just to shorten it a little bit because it's kind of a long, there. So the WOSB program combined with ED-WOSB, so both of those certifications together, they have an overall 5% goal that the federal government must meet every year to buy through WOSB and ED-WOSB small businesses. So let's think a little bit about, is the WOSB certification appropriate for you? So these are some things to think about when thinking about, in the most basic level, like, do I meet the most basic requirements for a WOSB certification? So something to think about is your business must be 51% owned and controlled by a woman or women. So women must hold at least 51% of the ownership of that business. And those same women must be the highest officer positions. They must hold the highest officer positions. In other words, they must control that business as well. They must control not only the long-term strategic view and implementation of that business, but they must also control the daily operations. So the women must be making the day-to-day business decisions and must also have the ability to make long-term decisions as well. You must have the proper NAICS codes for this particular certification. This certification is unlike the other certifications. It's unlike HubZone, unlike 8A, unlike Service Disabled Veteran Owned, in that there are only certain NAICS codes, those industries, those codes, those industry codes that are substantially underrepresented by women. So there's actually a lot of codes listed under this particular program, but it's important to keep that in mind. So if you go to sba.gov/WOSB, sba.gov/WOSB, you will find the list of the NAICS codes that are associated with this particular certification. So what this means is that there's only certain types of contracts, only certain NAICS codes, contracts, industries that will be set aside under this program. So if you, as a business, if your primary industry is one of those NAICS codes, or even if you have secondary work, like not the majority of your revenue doesn't come from this particular industry, but you have past performance in that particular industry, then you can have the basic eligibility required to apply for this particular certification. Again, like I talked about managerial experience, it's important for the woman or the women that comprise that 51% to also have the resume that matches the business. So your resume must show that you have the ability to run and manage that particular type of business. You must manage the daily operations, and there is no minimum amount of time required for you to be in business before you apply. Economically, so in order to be the economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, that 51% ownership must be personally economically disadvantaged as well. And the way that that is defined is that each individual separately that comprise that 51% cannot have a personal net worth of more than 750,000. So that's your assets minus your liabilities. Cannot have a 3-year average income that exceeds 350,000. So averaged over 3 years, your income cannot exceed 350,000. And the fair market value of all your assets cannot exceed 6 million. So with the woman-owned small business certification, that also is a set-aside program. So there are opportunities that are set aside by the federal government for those businesses that are certified as WOSB or EdWOSB. And there are 646 different NAICS codes that fall under that WOSB program. For the EdWOSB program, there's those same 646 NAICS codes, but then an additional 113 NAICS codes that fall under that program. So those are the NAICS codes that can be set aside under this particular program. And again, to see the list of those NAICS codes, you can go to sba.gov/WOSB. In order for a contracting officer to be able to justify setting aside a contract under that program, the contracting officer must have a reasonable expectation that at least 2 or more WOSBs will submit an offer at a fair and reasonable price. They also want to see past performance. So, you know, the federal government is risk averse. The federal government doesn't like to, you know, they want to know that the companies that they're awarding contracts to will be able to fulfill the requirements of that contract. And so the federal government is always looking for companies that are maybe a little more seasoned in their industry, you know, that have some past performance anyway, right? And that past performance can come from either, you know, corporate or commercial side rather, or other levels of government, like the city, you know, city contracts or state contracts. But that's something to, you know, be aware of, that the federal government is always kind of, you know, really ideally looking for small businesses that have some. Now, how to get certified through the woman-owned small business program. This is not, the woman-owned small business certification is a formal certification, just like the HubZone certification is. So you have to apply. You apply through beta.certified.sba.gov. So you go to beta.certified.sba.gov. That is the platform that you can then establish a profile. You do have to already be registered in sam.gov, just like how you do for HubZone, because your sam.gov profile needs to be connected to your beta.certified.sba.gov profile, because eventually, you know, when you do eventually, you know, when the approval for the certification occurs, SBA has to communicate that information back to the system for award management so that that certification shows on your SAM profile. So no matter what, you must go through beta.certified.sba.gov to upload documents. You may choose to go and pay money and go through a third-party certifier, which for our SBA's 4 third-party certifiers are listed here on this slide. They do charge. And essentially, you will essentially need to provide them all the information. You would have to be providing SBA. So you can't really get around providing the information. It's just, are you willing or interested in spending money for someone to help you kind of organize that information and steward that process? Or will you just go it on your own for free and do it on your own? If you go to beta.certify.sba.gov, you can find a very good checklist of what documents are required in order to apply for this certification. Again, very similar to the HubZone program, very similar to the 8A program that I'm going to be talking about in just a second in terms of documentation. Yeah, I think that's all I have for this particular slide. Any questions coming up on the chat before we move to the next certification?
Yeah, we don't have any in the chat, but Amy would like to ask a question.
Okay,
She does our client intake, so.
okay.
Sorry. Was it always true that you had to like run the business as a woman? Or did that just recently change?
Oh no, that has always been the case.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah, that's always been the case. Yeah, that's always,
Okay,
and the thing is with the formal, it used to be a self-certification. So really you didn't have to like formally apply and formally have
correct.
the agency review the documentation.
Right.
But, that's always been the case, but now it's like it's being verified by the
Okay.
SBA.
And if it's 60-40 women owned, is that better? Of course, would it look better if it's 60-40 than 41% or 51%? I'm sorry.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
That does, it's just a minimum of 51%. But once you reach that 51, it's neither here nor there.
And do you put that on your LLC form?
Where most people do that is in their, like if you're in LLC, they'll do that in their operating agreement.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the state of North Carolina, when you file your business, like when you file your articles of incorporation, they don't require you to say like the percentage ownership, but it needs to be evident somewhere in your legal
Okay.
documents, and it's usually your operating agreement.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the 8A Business Development Program. So the 8A Business Development Program is another certification program that is administered through the Small Business Administration to enable small businesses to bid on small business set-aside contracts that are only set aside for 8A businesses. Now, the 8A Business Development Program is for socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses. There's an important piece to this program that doesn't apply to the other two that I just mentioned, or to the service disabled veteran owned that I'll talk about after this, is that the 8A Business Development Program is a 9-year certification. So you only get 9 years. And it's one of those things where once you're admitted into the program, your 9-year clock begins. So you can't like come into the program and then leave the program and then come into the program again. Like, oh, I'm not really getting out of this program what I thought I would. Can I leave and kind of build up my book of business a little bit and then come back? That's not an option. So it's important, it's really important with this particular program to, if you are interested in applying, to apply when you really are ready to get the most benefits from the program. Because 9 years sounds like a long time, but you don't want to spend the first like 3 or 4 years building your business. Of course, you're going to build your business like while you're in the program, but you want to have some things already like established before you come into the program that will help you kind of like hit the ground running a little bit better. So some of the things to think about before applying to the 8A program. So the 8A program, do you already have a pretty decent commercial and government balance when it comes to your revenue? The reason this is a question to ask yourself about your business is because, you know, with these federal certifications, they can be very lucrative, but they're different from commercial contracts. The paperwork that's required for federal or government contracts is different. The rules and regulations that you're required to know are different from commercial rules and regulations. So it's important to kind of, you know, think about, has my business already interacted with government contracting? Do I have some ideas of how government contracting is different from regular commercial contracting? That will help you hit the ground running a little bit more, a little bit easier, if that's one thing that you can check off and say yes. Marketing ability. The 8A program especially can be very lucrative for small businesses because of the sole source authority that the 8A program has that no other federal certification has, which I'll talk about the sole source authority in a bit. But the 8A business development program is a self-marketing program. What's unique about the 8A business development program is that it's a 9-year program, like I said earlier. And 2, when you're admitted into the program, your file gets transferred to the state where your business is headquartered, and you are actually connected with a business opportunity specialist out of the SBA, that local SBA office. So like North Carolina, for instance, we have one district office in North Carolina that's based out of Charlotte. Other states have multiple district offices. California, for instance, because it's so large by population, they've got like 4 or 5 or 6 district offices within California. North Carolina has one district office. So when you're admitted into the program, you know, the people in headquarters review your application, you get admitted into the program, and then your case gets transferred down to the North Carolina office, and you get connected with a business opportunity specialist for those 9 years. An SBA employee, that what they do is they will do your annual reviews. They are responsible for ensuring that on an annual basis, you're continuing to stay compliant with the program. They will also help you with your business development. They will refer training opportunities to you. They will kind of help you navigate any questions you have about the federal contracting space, but they don't market on your behalf. The marketing piece is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to get out there, boots to the ground, and establish those relationships and let these federal contracting people know that you are an 8A certified company and these are your capabilities and this is, you know, you're ready to get contracts. So it is up to you to be able to market your business. And so you have to think about, what is your current marketing strategy? How many resources in terms of time and money are you dedicating to marketing? And do you have the resources to really market yourself to the federal government to really take full advantage of the 8A program? So that's something to think about. When we talk about proper NAICS codes, there's no specific NAICS codes that are eligible for the program. All NAICS codes are eligible for the program. It's not like the Women-Owned Small Business Program in that way, where there's only certain NAICS codes. There are net worth requirements. So there are requirements not similar to, but the same as the Women-Owned Small Business, where you cannot exceed $750,000 in net worth, $6 million in total assets, and $350,000 average 3-year average adjusted gross income. You have to be able to show that you have a diminished ability to compete for contracts. And basically the way you do that is by being socially and economically disadvantaged. So let me, okay, so socially disadvantaged, that top group there, that group, if you belong to any of those groups, you are automatically presumed to be socially disadvantaged. So you are socially disadvantaged. If you don't belong to any of those groups, but you still feel that you do have a social disadvantage based on perhaps your gender or perhaps a physical handicap, you may write up a social disadvantage narrative explaining how you have been disadvantaged throughout your career as a business owner, and SBA may consider that when determining whether or not you are socially disadvantaged. So you must be socially and economically disadvantaged. So the economic disadvantage piece is not, I guess there's a slide missing there. The economic disadvantage piece is similar again to the Women-Owned Small Business Program, net worth of less than $750,000, less than $6 million in assets, less than $350,000 in adjusted gross income. And I know that I already said that, so I'm repeating myself. But in terms of your net worth, SBA does exclude any equity you have in your primary home if you own your primary home. SBA also excludes any money you have invested in a qualified IRA account, so like an official IRA account, and any money or equity you have in your business, your primary business, that is the applicant. Okay. So waiver of the 2-year rule. There is actually a requirement for this particular program that you have been in business for at least 2 years. If you have not been in business for at least 2 years, but you still feel like you can take advantage of being in the 8A program, and you still feel like you should be in the 8A program and you'd like to be in the 8A program, you can write up a narrative to SBA explaining your business management experience and how your business management experience justifies, even though you haven't been in business for 2 years, maybe you've run a similar type of business for 20 years, but it just wasn't your own business. That you have the technical expertise, that you can write up a narrative explaining that you have the required requisite certifications to run that particular business, that you have access to capital, that you have access to lines of credit, ability to ramp up if needed in order to meet the requirements of a contract. You want to talk about your past performance, even if even though you've only been in business for 2 years, your business has past performance. So you talk about your past performance. This all kind of feeds into your ability, if you're looking for the waiver for the 2-year requirement, if you feel that you are ready and you want to participate in the 8A program, you do need to write up that waiver request if you've been in business for less than 2 years. If you haven't been in business for less than 2 years, then this does not apply to you. Okay, so let me talk briefly about the sole source authority that the 8A program has. Normally, with sole source contract opportunities at the federal, with the federal government, in order for a contracting officer to sole source, in other words, in order for a contracting officer to direct award, no competition, a contract to your company, you must be the only company essentially that can perform that type of work. So your company must be so specific in the work that it provides and its capacity to provide that work that only you could provide that work. So there's no need to go competitive. There's no need to compete this contract. The contracting officer must write up a justification explaining why this contract must be sole sourced. Well, in the 8A program, sole sourcing is a little easier than that. You do not have to be the only company that must be capable of performing that work and performing that contract. You need to be capable of performing that contract, but you need to be 8A certified. And if you're 8A certified, the contracting officer can, if they believe that you have the capacity and capability to perform that contract, they can award that contract to you without competition. And they can award contracts that way in the 8A program for up to $4.5 million for services and goods, and for manufacturing up to $7 million. So that's something to be aware of. In order to apply to the 8A program, you must go to certify.sba.gov. So beta.certify.sba.gov is the application process for the Women-Owned Small Business Program. Certify.sba.gov is the application process for 8A. And again, just like with certify.sba.gov, you must already have your System 4 award management profile completed and updated, because in order to complete your profile in Certify and begin the application, you must have an updated profile in SAM that can be pulled into this profile. And that's all done within the profile itself when you go into certify.sba.gov. Okay, so let's talk about the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Program. At this very moment in time, this is a self-certification. It will not be a self-certification for long. What I mean by self-certification is that you do not need to formally apply to be Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Certified. However, starting in January of next year, you will need to submit a formal certification, just like you do for these other certifications. There is a 3% requirement. So there is a 3% goal. So a goal that 3% of all federal contracting dollars go through Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Businesses. Oops. So again, thinking about whether or not this certification is appropriate for you, 51% of the ownership and control of the business must rest with service disabled veterans. Those veterans must also hold the highest officer positions. Again, when we're talking about proper NAICS codes, you just must have NAICS codes. You must be aware of what the government buys more of and less of, and make a determination on whether or not, it makes sense for you based on how much the government buys of what you sell, whether or not you should, get this certification. Managerial experience must rest within those service disabled veterans that comprise the 51% ownership and control. And those same service disabled veterans must also manage the daily operations of the company. So procurement update. Like I said earlier, eventually this program will become a formal certification program. Technically starting in January of 2023. At this point, we don't know yet if there is going to be a request to extend that timeline 6 months out. But at this point, starting in January 2023, small businesses will need to go through a formal certification process in order to be SDVOSB or VOSB certified. Also, for those of you who are veterans and you're aware of the VA small business certification to do business with the VA specifically, that certification is being transferred to the SBA. So it's going to roll up into one certification.
You let me know, you do have some comments in the chat.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you were asked, isn't it a catch-22 that you say you have money, but you're also poor? Do sole proprietors qualify or only LLCs?
Oh, sole proprietors qualify as well. So you have to be economically disadvantaged. So it's up to $750,000 net worth, but it can be much lower than that too. It's up to a $6 million asset calculation, but it can be much lower than that too. So yeah.
Okay, and then this goes back, these go back to that when you were discussing the 8A program.
Sure.
Is there an annual cost to participate in the 8A program?
No, so there is no annual cost to participate in the 8A program, but you do need to think about the resources that you would be expending in order to market your company and implement your strategic plan at the federal level. There's no like fee, like, oh, it costs $250 a year to participate in the 8A program. But, if you're going to be doing outreach to federal agencies, you may have to fly to a conference in Washington, D.C., for example, or drive to a conference in Washington, D.C. in order to do your outreach, stay in a hotel for a couple nights. So, because we're talking about federal level work, that work is not necessarily always going to be in North Carolina. So it's important to think about it kind of from that perspective. While there's no specific fee, you will probably need to spend some money on your marketing and outreach.
Okay. And I believe you pronounce her name, and I'm so sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name not right. Katriana, you've asked another question about Katrina. Thanks. Why don't you unmute yourself and ask her your question, because I think it deserves an answer. You're asking about a disabled veterans.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have like my dad has PTSD. He's 100% disabled, service related. My brother also has service related disability from being in the military, and they can hardly do anything. Part of that is executive dysfunction. So I guess this is just for like those who are physically, like if they got their leg blown off or something, but they can still do things. Like it's just like kind of a catch-22, because I feel like most of the injuries are kind of related to that executive dysfunction that they get from PTSD. And
Yeah, that's a good point. I do know. You're right. If it's 100% service disabled disability based on PTSD, it's not going to be easy for them to run a business. But in other cases, there may be a combination of, a physical disability as well as like a PTSD or some similar type of disability. So I'm assuming you're asking because of like the ownership and control piece, like the running the business piece.
exactly.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a catch-22, because the veteran does need to be the one that's running and controlling the business. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see how that is actually kind of unfair.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Well, thank
but
you for clarifying that.
that's the requirement.
So there are a lot of veterans here in North Carolina that will work with each other. You will have someone that has a lesser amount of disability that will work with someone that has more of a disability. And the two veterans themselves will have more than 51% of the business, and they will work to run the business themselves. There are quite a few
That's a good
veteran
approach.
businesses here that do that.
Cool. Okay. That's a good approach.
Mhm. Yeah, good question. Was there anything else, Laura? For now?
I have one more question, actually.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with all the like legalization of marijuana in different states, and it not being federally legal, is this something that would qualify in any way? Just because I'm actually part of like a social equity business in Massachusetts that's cannabis related. So it's all
Mhm.
legal there, but I'm wondering about this for us and like, do you know anything about like, is it just disqualified immediately because it's not federally legal?
Yeah. So if
Okay.
it's like a cannabis related business, because this is a federal program, those types of businesses at this point would not be eligible.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know.
Mhm.
Okay, that's it. That's all you have for now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So what this slide says is that at this point in time, if you're an SDVOSB and you are self-certified, you will have a 1-year grace period from when the requirement officially comes to be formally certified. So that's something to be aware of. And if you want to get on a mailing list of updates about the service disabled veteran owned transfer from self-certification to formal certification, you can go to cvetransfer@sba.gov and ask to be put on their mailing list, and they will start sending you mail. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Mentor Protege program. I actually didn't catch this. It's no longer called the All Small Mentor Protege program. It's called the SBA Mentor Protege program. But let's talk a little bit about that. So the Mentor Protege program is a program where a small business that has pre-identified a potential mentor can enter into a formal mentor protege relationship with that mentor that is reviewed and approved by SBA, which would, if approved by SBA, allow that protege to work very closely in a business development capacity and to bid on contracts through a joint venture with that mentor without being automatically considered affiliated to that mentor, which basically means that even if your mentor is a large business, you can bid on contracts, small business contract set-asides with that mentor through a joint venture. You can enter into a business development agreement with that mentor and still generally not be considered affiliated with them, which would kick you out of the small business size category. So some of the aspects of the SBA Mentor Protege program is that you must have pre-identified your mentor. The mentor must meet their requirements, which there's a few requirements, but basically they cannot be a mentor to more than 3 proteges at a time. The protege must meet requirements. There are a number of requirements for them as well, but basically they can only have up to 2 mentors during the life of their business. So there are some mentor protege limitations. There is some required training. And what my suggestion would be is if you are interested, excuse me, in learning more about the Mentor Protege program, to go to sba.gov/ASMPP, sba.gov/ASMPP, to learn more about the Mentor Protege program. So some of the benefits of the Mentor Protege program is that it enables firms to joint venture, which increase that firm's capacity and capabilities, as you know, technical capacity, bonding capacity, past performance, You can use both parties to the joint venture, their bonding capacity, their past performance, their technical capacity. So it really, enables you to bid on contracts that you may otherwise have not been able to bid on. The Mentor Protege program does facilitate business development opportunities. So you do have to have a written out business development plan with your mentor that's approved by SBA, and SBA will hold you and your mentor accountable for providing that business development assistance to the mentor. And again, it creates opportunities for you to increase your network and, grow your business. So here are some regulations to be aware of. We talked about SBA size thresholds. To learn more about the size regulations, what it means to be small, you can go to 13 CFR Code of Federal Regulations, Part 121. To learn more about the nitty-gritty of the Hub Zone program, that's in 13 CFR 126. To learn about the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned program, that's 13 CFR 125. The 8A regulations, 13 CFR 124. Woman-owned small business, 13 CFR 127. You could literally Google 13 CFR 127 to find more about these regulations. You're going to want to use the website called ecfr.gov, electroniccfr.gov, ecfr.gov. That's what has all the most updated regulations. Let me go ahead and switch on over to Ms. Pamela Racer. I'm going to share her presentation now. Oops.
Thank you, Ari. So you got it. It's up, Ari.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, everybody. I know you've been sitting and going through this with us, and now is the nitty-gritty. I just kind of want to walk you through it. Probably a lot of you have already sent me emails or talked to me before, so hopefully this will help clear up a lot of maybe some of your questions that you didn't ask in the beginning. I'm hoping it will. So we're going to go forward with this and hopefully answer some of those questions for you. Next slide, please. So first off, being a responsible contractor, Ari was talking about in every one of those certifications, having the adequate financial resources to do a contract, being able to show that you can perform that contract, both the delivery of it on the same performance schedule and the same commitments, having a satisfactory performance level as far as being responsible, making sure you have good business integrity, making sure you have good accounting controls. These aren't just made up by the contracting officer. You can see right here, this is pulled straight from the federal acquisition regulations. So everything is coming from a regulation or a law. Just like when Ari showed you that particular screen at the end, every one of those particular, every one of the particular business certifications are even based on a federal regulation. So is being a responsible contractor. Now, responsible and responsive are the two main qualifications for being able to bid on a contract in the federal marketplace. You have to be found to be responsible and responsive. Responsible meaning that you're meeting these particular things on the screen here, that you've got the money to get it done, you've got the people to get it done, that you've done it before, and you can prove that you can get it done, that you've got the equipment to make sure you can get it done, and that you've done everything you need to have done as far as getting your regulations, getting your registrations done, and you bid properly on it. Okay, so that's being responsible. Being responsive means that when you answered that request for proposal, you did it in accordance with how it was advertised. If they told you that it had to be in, and I'm not exaggerating at this point, okay, 13 pages, 11 font, Arial font, 11, then that's what they want to see. And if yours is 12 pages, they will deem it non-responsive. It has to be exact. But I just wanted to kind of walk you through each time that we mention a specific qualification, we're actually quoting it from a regulation. This isn't just a rule that someone put out there to say, okay, this sounds good. It's actually a regulation that's behind that particular rule. Next slide, please. So to assess your business, first you have to decide, and I already talked a little bit about this earlier, is what is your NAICS code, your North American Industry Classification System? What are you selling, whether it be a product, a service, a combination of both? You have to decide what you do and what you do well. The government does not want to see that you do everything from making peanut butter sandwiches to making rocket ships, because they're going to think your rocket ships aren't that good. You may make an awesome peanut butter sandwich. You need to concentrate on what you guys do best. And you know what you do best. You went into a business knowing that you could do something and make an impact out there with it. So you know what you do best. Do your NAICS codes based on what you do best. Evaluate how you're going to sell and research yourself out there. The biggest tool you can use for marketing yourself is called a capability statement. That is, you can Google capability statement and put a NAICS code behind it, your NAICS code behind it, and they will show you tons of examples out there. You can go to the SBTDC website, and there's a capability statement video out there that will explain to you how you do it. But your capability statement is your billboard for your company. You have a business card that says who you are. Your capability statement says what you do and why they want to buy it from you. So that's your billboard. So you need to manage your expectations when you're working in the government marketplace. And the most important thing is conducting a security checkup with your company. And I'll get a little bit more detail of that later, but almost every government solicitation is going to ask you about your security. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, with your NAICS code, stay within the things that you do best. And I know a lot of people think, okay, well, I'm going to subcontract out. I'm going to run a business and I'll subcontract out whatever I want to do, whatever I want to bid on. Okay. There's also limitations on subcontracting that says what you can subcontract out. So know your federal law. Only bid and do your NAICS codes based on what you do best. Once you get in that market, and you're doing well and you expand your specialties, then you can expand your NAICS. Like I said, evaluate yourself. Go out. I've got several different places you can look here. If you go to the federal agency forecast, the link is in this PowerPoint. We'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the PowerPoint. That's where each government agency actually has on a website their procurement forecast for the small businesses. And it tells you what they're planning on buying. USAspending.gov, very easy to use. You can do it by government agency. You can do it by area. You can even Google under Federal Procurement Data Systems Next Generation, that's FPDS. You can, it's just like a Google search engine. You can actually put your NAICS out there and put a year behind it, and it'll tell you who won every contract and how much they got that contract for. So there's tons of information you can find out there on what you're selling and what people are paying for it out there in the market. Because let's face it, if you have a good commercial business and you're doing well on the commercial market, why would you want a chance moving into the government market? So think about that. If you're ready to move into the government market, and you know you can be there, you know you have what the government buys, you're ready to go in through this process, you're ready to devote yourself to it, then that's awesome. But make sure you're ready before you do that. And the best place and easiest place to look for everything that's over 25K is SAM.gov. It's very easy to use the website. There are tutorials, there is help, there are videos. Excuse me. They have all kinds of information out there. They have wage determination, so you know what the expectation is for you to be paying your employees to perform services on the federal market. So that's a great place to get started when you're doing your research. Next slide. And again, managing your expectations, like Ari was trying to point out to you, and like I've been saying, this is hard work. There's a lot of things to be done. I'll be honest with you. Even registering in SAM is not particularly easy. It can be quite daunting. Okay. So you want to make sure that you understand what you're getting into, that you're ready to be a federal contractor, that you're ready to do this work. You know you can do it, and you're ready to get involved with it. When you go into SAM, you're going to have to certify several things about your business. You're going to have to certify you can do the work. You're going to have to certify that you understand the federal regulations around doing that work. And those will be listed in SAM. So that could help you. And guys, Google is your friend. There are tons of emails, tons of YouTube videos out there for Google that explains to you the difference between working with a federal contractor and doing commercial business. If you want to go, just to help you out a little bit, there are tons of legal firms that also hold webinars. Tons of legal firms that hold webinars. Each of those legal firms hold these webinars. Most of them are free. And you can ask questions afterwards. All on federal contracting. Look for these things. Google that. This is what we're talking about, managing your expectations. Know what it's going to take to market yourself and get out there and look for what you need to look for. And conducting security checks. Everybody figures, well, I have a small business. They're not going to want to be trying to get into my business. They like big businesses when they want to scam somebody. Nope, that's not true. I've been in this business for 6 years now, 27 years, and DOD before that. And I can tell you, I've seen quite a few businesses. I've seen 3 in the past 2 years that have completely had to give up their business due to being invaded by someone. Let's just put it that way. So social engineering is real out there. You need to worry about cybersecurity. You need to worry about who can get in and out of your systems. Think about looking at the NIST assessment, and you can Google that. It's very simple. There's a security plan out there. When you first look at it, you're going to go, oh my gosh, this is daunting. There's no way. Again, there are tons of YouTube videos that will walk you through it very cleanly. All you're doing essentially is saying, here's these points on the supplier risk assessment. This is my grade of where I stand. here is my plan of action of where I need to be. And this is how I'm going to get there. And then every 3 months, go out there and update that. That is huge with contracting officers. They want to see that you have a plan out there and that you're updating it. That is huge. And most federal contracts require that. So think about that too. That's something else that you're going to have to do when you have a federal contract. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about registrations. So the system for award management, SAM.gov. When I say it's daunting, that's because of the checks behind the system. When you go into SAM, what I would recommend you do is you go directly to the Help tab. On the Help tab, there are tons of videos, of helpful verifications, there's a chat system. You can chat with someone and ask them, hey, what should I do first? It is arranged very easily to follow under several different segments and models. There are certain information you need to have with you when you get into there so that you can fill it out while you're in SAM.gov. So make sure that you have that information with you. There's a checklist. And if you're looking at help, there's actually a couple of documents that are lengthy, but you can save them down as PDF that actually have screen prints and will walk you through line by line how to register in SAM. Know what they won't tell you in SAM, guys. Number one, SAM is going to go back against what you have your business registered under for your EIN or your TIN. So you want to make sure that when you register in SAM, it matches exactly for your business address and name of business and your name for your EIN and SAM. You're also going to want to make sure that it matches exactly against what's on the post office because they're going to validate your address. And when I say exactly, if your IRS says STREET, make sure in SAM you don't put ST period because it could delay your processing. So be very careful about that. Make sure it matches exactly. Once you get through SAM, you'll go through several levels. When you get to the end, as I mentioned, it's gonna ask you, do you understand these FAR clauses? And it's going to give you a list of FAR clauses. And you're going to have to, at the end, it's going to ask you to certify that you understand that these FAR clauses are going to apply to you when you're doing business with the federal government. These FAR clauses are going to be the ones, most of the ones that Ari and I have talked about today, but there's going to be some other ones, most of which have to do with ethics, not taking kickbacks, making sure that you're aware of that you're not. Most of them you'll look at them and you'll go, oh, well, of course I don't have anything to do with human trafficking, but they just want you to understand. You got to understand this is a government contract, and everybody knows what a contract is. It's going to have a lot of stuff in it, and you're going to go small print. But make sure you read it and understand it, because when you sign that SAM, you just signed that you understood that. So kind of think about it that way. So something else you can do with the government is state and local awards. You register in e-procurement. You register in the vendor portal. And yes, those are two separate ones. You have to register twice to work with the state of North Carolina. And then they put you through NC bids, easy to work with. NC bids is very easy to work with. You can find bids throughout there and see what there is, what's going through the interactive purchasing system. There are tutorial classes out there. There are videos. All you have to do is go into the system and start looking. Local governments and cities, unfortunately, no counties, local governments, or cities are alike. Everybody does their own thing. So the only thing we can do is send you to this link here, and it's spelled out at the bottom. And when you get to that link, you click on either the city, the county, or wherever you're doing the municipality that you want to do business. And it'll send you to that website so you can look at their purchasing procedures. That way you make sure you're not doing something that you don't need to do, or not doing something that you need to do in order to do business with them. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, registering with the government, just a few things for you to understand. UEI, which is your, that is, I know before you probably had heard of this, of the term DUNS number. And that's what people used to use. Now we use UEI, meaning your size standards, compliance and regulations, and self-certifications. And I'm going to go into each of these just really quick on the next couple of pages. Next slide, please. So the first one is UEI and CAGE. So when you register in SAM, they will assign you a UEI. And that's unique entity identifier. Okay. When you're doing, once you get that specific number is the one you need to keep. That's when you need to keep that in a safe place, someplace where you know where it is. That's how you're going to advertise who you are. Your CAGE is going to be unique to your physical address. And you're going to get that when you sign up in SAM also. Validating your entity was a little bit of what I talked about with SAM. When you're in SAM, everything is going to match back against your IRS, TIN, or EIN. It's a requirement of the government. What they're trying to do when they do this is just verify that you're a legal business. You hear about fraud all the time, the businesses that people go out there and say they're a business when they're not. They want to get a loan, or they do it for bad purposes. That's all the government is trying to do. They're trying to validate that you're a legal entity, that it's okay for them to make sure that you're out there and you're verified to do business with them. And meeting the size standards. Guys, like Ari said, 97% of all businesses are small. Size standards are going to be for all of the people that are on this call. I feel very certain all of you are going to be small. Affiliation is determined in accordance with 13 CFR 121-103. If you go out to SBA, they have a wonderful thing, and it's called an affiliation guide. You could pull it down and read it, and it makes it so much clearer. Even the first 3 pages of that affiliation guide will explain what affiliation means. What they mean by affiliation is that if there is someone, let's say you're sharing an accounting system, let's say they're making your business management decisions, you may be considered affiliated with that business if that's the case. Again, a small business, just as we were talking about in the certifications, when they said, we want to make sure that that owner is in control of that business, that they are making the long and short range decisions for that business, that they are the ones actually running that business, that no one can come in and tell them, no, you're not going to do this, we're going to do that. No one can override them. They're in charge of that business. That's what the affiliation is trying to determine, that you don't have anyone that's going to have undue influence to force you to do something with the business. So the procurement NAICS, as long as you follow what's out there, you'll be all right. The SBA has updated the NAICS when this particular slide was made. It was before October. You can see this just recently happened. So you guys should be good with that. Next slide, please. So compliance and regulations, like we were talking before, as a government contractor, the government does a really good job of spending taxpayers' money. People say, no, I don't think they do, but they really do. That contracting officer has got to sign her name stating that she followed all of these federal acquisition regulations and code of federal regulations when she let out and awarded that contract. She's not going to put her job in jeopardy unless she's sure that company is going to be able to provide that widget that they said they could provide. So you need to make sure that you understand everything about that. That was what we were going into a little earlier when I said you have to understand the labor standards. You have to understand all the other statutes, and all of those are spelled out in SAM, but basically what the minimum wage is that you can put under certain, and whether or not that even applies to a specific contract. You need to understand integrity in the procurement process. Like I mentioned before, no anti-kickbacks, no gratuities clauses. You need to know the basic elements of a contract. Believe it or not, if you're not used to dealing with contracts, you're probably not aware, but there's something called a uniform contracting code. Most contracts are uniform. They have a section A through a section M, and it's pretty standard what each of those sections are. So once you kind of get that down pat and you study that uniform contract code, then you'll know, oh, C, that's usually where the statement of work is, or excuse me, or E, that's usually where the inspection and testing is. So, or J, that's usually where the extra contract clauses are, so that you'll know where to look when that RFP comes out at things that might affect how that contract is being carried out. So, because that's the important thing. The last thing you want to do is think that you've delivered something to the government and you've met your deliverable to the government just to find out that you have not met your deliverable to the government. And self-certifications, I think Ari kind of went over that with you guys. Excuse me, kind of gave you an overview of the self-certifications. And then also explain the difference between just self-certifying and being able to participate in the set aside contracts. Next slide, please. So really quickly, for those of you that aren't aware of what the Small Business and Technology Development Center is, I work in the GCAP program. That stands for Government Contracting Assistance Program. We're a specialty program within the North Carolina SBTDC. Excuse me. And the SBTDC is a business and technology extension service of the University of North Carolina system. Excuse me. Each regional service center is located within a University of North Carolina institution throughout the state of North Carolina, and they're operated in partnership with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Next slide. So, resources that we can offer to help businesses. We have pre-venture orientations. People that think they want to open a business, they're just not sure what they need to do. They just want a little bit of guidance. We have pre-venture, we have something called business launch. Get you started, let you know how you should register before you register. That way you don't register as an LLC and find out you should have registered as a sole proprietor. We have marketing and sales. We can help with financial management, international trade opportunities, access to debt and equity financing, government contracting opportunities. We have events. We do co-sponsored events just like this, the one we're doing today. Next slide, please. So what we do as a group, the GCAP, is educate businesses that are selling products to the government, local, state, and federal government on how they can make sure that they're doing that the best advantage. The core of our program is confidential one-on-one counseling that we offer to them free of charge. We're located throughout North Carolina. There are 5 of us that are located throughout North Carolina. That's it. That's all we have for the whole state. It's 5. So we're spread pretty thin, but we navigate people through the federal, state, and local contracting system. Next slide, please. So where we usually come in is bidding and solicitations. Once you've got yourself set up, you know you're ready to be in that federal market, you're looking at those solicitations and you're going, I need help understanding the requirements. I've been in business 5 years. I have a great commercial business. I'm ready to go. I want to do business with the federal government. We can help you understand what the solicitations look like, what the terminology is, help you locate the specifications and the standards so you can be found both responsive and responsible when you answer that bid, and review that bid and proposal for you. After you've reviewed after you've received the award, we can help you negotiate and interface with that agency, make sure that your cost accounting system is correct for your contract and you're following it. And we can help you with quality control, HR, and we can provide up to the minute information on procurement processes and procedures, because as you've seen, each time a new executive order comes out, each time something is changed in the federal regulation, these change daily. So we're able to help you keep up with that. Each time that you may want to go into the government business, you may want to be a subcontractor. You may want to understand what requirements are called for subcontractor, because you feel like you've met all the federal things, but you're just not ready to be a prime contractor. Because think about it this way. How can you bid on a contract if you don't know how much your service costs per unit? So you have to be to a point to where you're successful enough in your business commercially that you understand how to make a profit and what your profit is before you can successfully bid on a government contract, understanding their terminology and how they're going to allow you to price. Before you get into that process, the last thing you want to do is chance your business on something that may not pan out for you. But when you're ready for it, it can really, really help your business. I've seen a business that I started helping in 2017 that was just at $1 million. And right now they're edging around 80 million a year. So I have seen businesses explode in the government market. You just have to be dedicated, know that you're ready, have the resources, and understand that it takes a lot of work. Next slide. So that's it for me. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a really good gauge of where we're coming from. We're not just throwing stuff out there to make it difficult. Everything is based on a federal regulation. We're trying our best to explain, to kind of help you guys understand what we have to do, what you have to do to meet those regulations and still be able to do business with the government. So do we have any questions?
No, we don't have any questions. We did have a question, and Jaron Joseph, if you, so after this workshop, we normally send out the recording link so people can listen to that. Are you, Pam and Ari, are you able to share your slide presentation with me so that I could send that to them as well? And then once you all have that, if you have any further questions or you need some extra counseling or coaching, reach out to me. If you're not in our area of service, we will find the center that will be able to help you. And right now, if you want to unmute yourself, if you had any questions, that would be fine too, I'm sure. Thank you so much, ladies. That was very informative. I really appreciate it. I know, Pam, we've been working over the years and I've never gotten the full story, so. Oh, here, Keisha, there's some
Yeah,
people.
and sorry, mine just dropped. So my video dropped. So I mean, I got kicked out of the meeting. I don't know if you
Oh,
all noticed
sorry.
that like a minute ago. So I'm sorry. So were there any questions?
No, if there's no more
Okay.
questions, people just wanted to know if I would be able, I know I can share the recording. I wondered if one of you would share your slide presentation and I could reach out to everybody. The email that I send this to is the email that you registered with. So hopefully that is the correct email that you'd like me all to send it. That was somebody just had that on there. That what email do you send it to? It's whatever one you registered on. If you need to reach out, if you don't receive it, you can reach out to me. You can get my email address off of our website, which is the Western Women's Business Center, www.bcnc.org, and I'll put that information in the chat real quick. Anything else anybody wanted to add?
Hey, guys, there's tons of information on the SBA website. Please go out there and look under Women's Business Centers, under women-owned businesses. There's links to training. There's links to the Journey program. There's the Ascent, which is for women. It's a fantastic program. Fantastic. So there's all kind of links for help. Please, there's tons of resources. You guys are taxpayers. You're paying for these resources. Everybody keeps saying they're free. They're not free. You guys have earned them. You're paying for them.
Right,
For
right.
people and citizens. Please utilize them.
Yep. I think that's the biggest thing is that most people don't realize that all of these resources are at no cost. And that's what's amazing. So
Right.
if you have any questions, everybody, you can reach out. Thank you. This was great. Headed to another meeting, Sala. So yeah, that's it.
Sounds good. Laura, I will email you a copy of this presentation so you can send
Great.
it out.
That sounds
Okay.
perfect. All
Great.
right. All right. If
Thank
anybody
you.
doesn't have anything else, thanks for coming today. And I put my contact information in our email, our website address in the chat. All right.
Bye. Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.